You're listening to the Weekend Sport Podcast with Jason Pine from News Talk ZB.
As mentioned, always great to get the chance to catch up on a regular basis with New Zealand Rugby CEO Mark Robinson to stay up to date with a range of rugby issues. Mark Robinson is with us on Weekend Sport. Mark, as always, thank you for your time. Can we start with figures released this week on Super Rugby viewership during the round robin segment of the competition? Over 1.94 million New Zealanders tuning in. That is a 16% lift on last season. How pleasing are these numbers for you?
Yeah, they're incredibly pleasing. We always had a good sense throughout the competition that viewership was strong. Certainly the anecdotal feedback we were getting right through the competition, the round robin, was really positive. So to have that validated now is incredibly pleasing. And we're when you look back and you think that there are more viewers at this time, already above the numbers for the entire competition last year with an entire final series to come, that's really exciting. So I guess it's a sign of what we can do with the product. And the on-field product's been incredible. The officiating's been great. And we have a sense that we're onto something here with what the shape of the game should look like on the field. And then there's also been some great work done around marketing and packaging the competition as well. So all in all, it's a great sort of direction of travel we're on here, we think.
Absolutely. So the increased engagement, you put it down mainly to the on-field product. Is that kind of what you put your finger on when you're looking for the real reasons behind this?
Well, I think there's a combination of things, like I touched on at the end of my last response there, Piney. There's definitely gone a lot more work gone into engagement on social media. We've worked really hard with Sky in terms of the way the match days have been packaged. They've done some great storytelling alongside us here and the partnership we have. And, we're starting to see the benefit of a little bit more access to the athletes and coaches. We've got more work to do there, we think, and we know that everyone's excited to be involved in developing that more. So, look, I just think it's a combination of a lot of good things. But at the end of the day, it's important that the product on the field is great, and we can see by all the matrix thing coming through here too, with less intervention, reducing the match duration times, more ball and play. There's just a lot more excitement around the product. Also, I think the uncertainty of the competition, obviously, there's been some great storylines around what teams are coming through and performing well into the playoffs. We're probably seeing a number of games finishing with a lower score margin, in terms of the results as well, so closer games and more upset. So all of those things, I think, have combined to give us a great product this year.
How keen are you to see those viewership numbers spill over into increased attendances at games themselves?
Yeah, well, it's obviously a critical next step for us, and we've started making a little bit of headway there. I think we've seen probably in the last few weeks in-ground attendance start to lift a bit. We think obviously into the finals there'll be some big crowds, but that's certainly a work on. We had a board meeting for the Super Rugby Pacific Commission last Friday in Sydney, and it's certainly with the incoming CEO Jack Mesley working on a strategy for next year and beyond. That'll be something we're really targeting as well.
Would you like to see more afternoon kickoffs in Super Rugby?
Look, it's something we're actively engaged with our clubs on, and we'll be talking to our broadcast partners with about that possibility. Certainly things we sort of talked about last week were more afternoon rugby, Sunday rugby. How do we look at using the Anzac round more? We think we've made a good start with that, but what can be done more around creating that real Anzac rivalry? And the Super round, again, are probably all opportunities for improvement. So definitely it's in the mix, Piney, to think about. Seen some wonderful scenes around daytime rugby. But, we're also in partnership with our clubs and Sky, and we've just got to sort of work through to make sure everyone's seeing success in whatever the next iteration of the competition is.
So the shape will change next year. The Rebels, of course, are gone as soon as they're knocked out, which could be this afternoon in Wellington. Do you have any feel, Mark, on what Super Rugby might look like next year with just the 11 teams?
A little bit of work went into that on Friday. There's more work. The team's gone away to look at the different draw permutations, into next year. So we're probably another 4 to 6 weeks away from really landing that. But a lot of good work going into it. and we think there's still a way to develop, and deliver a really compelling competition.
And you mentioned Super Round there. That's been in Melbourne. It won't be back in Melbourne, will it, without a team base there?
Look, we haven't confirmed that yet, but there are a number of parties coming forward showing interest in what Super Round could look like. So it's another thing alongside the work we're doing on the draw overall that we'll just have to consider in the next little while.
Other issues around at the moment, New Zealand Rugby's special general meeting a week or so ago saw the provincial unions vote for Proposal 2 as the way forward for New Zealand Rugby's governance. How will the impending governance change affect New Zealand Rugby's operations?
Oh, look, Piney, we've been pretty clear. I mean, I've been really consistent. It's not for us or for me to be, speaking about the governance review or the vote last week. What we're really charged with at the moment is making sure we deliver the game, and I'm really encouraged with a number of things we're seeing. We've just spoken about the really positive signs we see in Super Rugby. We're also seeing a great start to the community game this year. The numbers year on year at this stage, by comparison to last year, are up by about 6 or 7%, and that's on top of a big lift last year coming out of COVID again. So that's super encouraging. We've got a lot of exciting things ahead with our teams in black. The Black Ferns and the All Blacks. Encouraged with the way the Sevens teams are building into Paris. It was a tough weekend, very fine margins in Madrid last week, but overall we think the trajectory of those teams are positive. So look, we've got a lot of stuff to focus on here. We're also taking time to just sort of refresh some of the strategic work we're doing with a view to the next sort of 3 or 4 years, and we're really looking forward to engaging again with our stakeholders now that the vote has been passed. We feel it's a time to be able to bring the game together. We know there's been different views from different stakeholders around governance, but now I guess it's our chance to step forward and lead and really get people excited about the possibilities in the game, and we've got opportunities to do that in the next few weeks with the provincial union CEOs all coming into Napier for a couple of days together, which we're really excited about. And that's where our energy is. It's got to be to take the game forward and try and bring it together and deliver on some, we think, really, really cool times here.
Are you positive and optimistic that that'll happen, that the game will come back together? Because it has been a bit divisive.
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously clearly a lot of, different views and emotions flying around in the last few weeks, and that's really unfortunate. There's a distraction around some of the hugely positive things, I've mentioned in our chat today, because we would ideally love to be telling stories about all that cool stuff. But now that, this has been brought to a head, we feel it is the time to come together. And I think fundamentally, Piney, most people involved with the game across New Zealand do want the best for it. They sometimes have different views as to what the best necessarily means or is, but that's our role, in terms of coordinating, facilitating that, trying to understand the different views and ultimately chart a way forward. And as I've said a few times this week, we see revenues now across the game at over $330 million. We do think there's a viable model here that can cater to the grassroots, create excellent development and pathway systems with probably more alignment than we have at the moment, really good national competitions that feed into a professional competition in Super Rugby that ultimately supports our teams winning on the international stage. So they are the sort of things we've got to work through the detail, and a few of those things at the moment in the model could certainly be improved, and that's where we see the opportunity. But certainly the capacity in the game, the value being created in the game with revenue opportunities means that we can certainly resource the game well, but there's a few things at the moment that need a good tweak.
Speaking of the international stage, we heard recently of interest from Qatar in hosting rugby's new Nations Championship finals when they come to pass. Can you give us any update there?
Not really, Piney. I mean, there's a lot of speculation floating around. The most encouraging thing is that we are seeing so much excitement and speculation around this new competition. And from what I gather, I actually haven't seen the stories, just a few headlines, but from what I gather, they're no different to what was talked about sort of 4 or 6 weeks ago. So there's nothing, to add from our side there. But we are encouraged by, some of the interest we're seeing internationally. And we just have to keep working through the the process of landing the competition and working through some of the commercial arrangements that are involved.
And a bit of talk recently about the possibility of an Anzac Day Bledisloe Cup test. Could that work given where April 25 is in the Super Rugby season? Could that work feasibly or not?
Oh, look, we're remaining open-minded. There are a number of things. You're right. There's a lot of work to be done around the feasibility of that at a number of levels. The calendar, the impact on Super Rugby, player welfare consideration. So there's a whole raft of things to consider. We've got Rugby Australia. Phil Waugh and his team are over to New Zealand this week, so we've got a couple of days with them again. I'm sure we'll have another good discussion on that, along with a whole raft of things around the Rugby Championship. A little bit more talk on our club competitions and picking up on what's possible with Super Rugby in the women's space in the future. So we hope next year to be able to include it might be a brief sort of crossover finals sort of component, and then what beyond 25 the women's game could look like as well. So there's some really good stuff on the table. We're having some great constructive conversations with Phil and his team. We'll look forward to engaging on the Anzac Bledisloe idea at that time.
Back to domestic rugby, the NPC, Mark. What jumps into your mind when you think about the NPC at the moment and the way forward for that competition?
Well, I think I probably captured it when I answered your question about what's possible in bringing the stakeholder groups together, Piney. We do see a place for national competitions. They are a really critical part of our pathway. We're encouraged that all stakeholders involved in the conversations around our pathways and competitions think change is needed. So, we're certainly all aligned as it relates to the fact that change is required, but it's just what that sort of evolves into and what the final state of that is that we're obviously working towards at the moment. So we actually, we definitely want a competition. We think it's important for our community pathways and aspirations in the game. There's some great traditional rivalries that are associated with it. But we've always said it needs to be financially viable, and that's a key thing we're sort of trying to work through at the moment and balancing all the different principles at play. Do
you think it can be financially viable, I mean?
Absolutely. As I said before, we think the game can be financially viable in this country. There's been enough growth of revenue in recent times, and we're investing in more sort of growth at the moment, obviously, to create value for the game. So, but it will mean just sitting down together, getting all the appropriate people in the room, and thinking through what that model could be.
And Auckland Stadium discussion. Do you have a current view on the best way forward there?
Look, we're pretty clear on the fact that we think that if Auckland was to consider an alternative where our preferred model was, but ultimately we have a huge amount of respect and amazing history and tradition with Eden Park. If there's to be a conversation about alternatives, and we think that's a really good situation for the country and Auckland region to be in. And when you look at what fans are demanding, I guess, of experiences now, when you look at the opportunities that alternatives can provide in terms of a real transformational opportunity for the Auckland region and for all of New Zealand for that matter, then we think the conversation about alternatives is really, really positive. And so, we'll just, as required, we'll be involved in processes if needed, but otherwise, we're just excited that there's a process in place now to consider what alternatives might provide, or what in turn the growth and development of Eden Park could look like.
You reckon Razor's looking forward to naming his first All Black squad in a couple of weeks?
I sure do. Yeah, I've been travelling a little bit, but I've been back and caught up with him a little bit over the last couple of days, and was with him and Jason and Leon in Hamilton last night. And yeah, they're fizzing. They've done a huge amount of great work, Piney. They've done a lot of work around the whole game with different stakeholders. They're connecting in really well. I know they've been working with leadership groups and the management team group. They've done a lot of good work, but we've sort of talked about it briefly over the last couple of days, the fact that everyone's looking forward to getting together and getting closer to actually playing some footy, and you couldn't hope for a better start to our international season having England here. It's always a great rivalry. They're tracking incredibly well with the team that they're putting together, and they showed evidence of that at the back end of Six Nations. So, yeah, it's all shaping up. With a great final series to Super Rugby, we think there'll be some compelling viewing in the next few weeks. We're going to name the All Blacks after the final, which is the first time for many, many years we've done that to make sure we've got a great runway around telling great stories for Super Rugby, and then it'll be all on into the All Blacks and the Black Ferns kicking in after that. So like I say, Piney, that's why we're really heartened with some of the things we're seeing in the game. Some of the words and descriptors of around where rugby's used in the lead up to the SGM were really unfortunate and frankly just not true about the state of the game. We have real heart that it's in a great space and it can continue to grow.
All right. Hey, Mark, appreciate your time as always. Thank you for making yourself available to us. Mark Robinson, CEO of New Zealand Rugby. Your chance to pick up on anything you heard there from Mark Robinson at 0800 80 10 80 9292 on text. It's 12:26. I agree with that last bit, I must say. The narrative around the game has at times been a very negative one this year from certain sectors of the population. And yes, the game has issues to address. Of course it does, but so do lots of sports. The quality, though, of Super Rugby, if we just look at Super Rugby as a product, I think it's been very good. And the viewer numbers are no surprise to me. The fact that they're up 16% year on year. I know you can prove anything with stats, but those are the stats. 16% increase year on year in terms of viewer numbers of Super Rugby. I mean, I'll be watching these 3 games today at ground for the first one, the other 2 on TV. In my view, Super Rugby, very watchable. Daytime kickoffs. Really interesting issue for me. It works for a lot of people in terms of getting along to the game, especially families. The players really like it. Almost every player you talk to about playing games at 2:30 or 4:30 in the afternoon are big fans of it. But for the broadcaster, they like, of course, the evening kickoffs. More eyeballs for them. And I must say, as a TV viewer, I kind of do as well. I'd much rather watch rugby on TV at 7:05 than 4:30, wouldn't you? Isn't it a more convenient time to watch television? 4:30, there's still quite a bit of the day to go. You're not quite done with all the things that you want to get done. There's other things to grab your attention. 7:05's great. Club players here in Wellington, for example, have been quite vocal this week on the 4:30 kickoff, which will preclude a bunch of them from getting along. What about Sunday games? Is that the answer? Again, great for people getting along, not so much for people watching on television. 2:30 on a Sunday is a dead zone for TV viewership. I mean, really, who's watching TV at 2:30 on a Sunday afternoon? The answer, it's balance, isn't it? The answer is balance. A mix of what works for broadcasters who provide massive revenue to the game and what works for us as fans to get along. The two are not one and the same, but they have to coexist, don't they? What is the best balance for you as far as the kickoff times are concerned?
For more from Weekend Sport with Jason Pine, listen live to News Talk ZB weekends from midday or follow the podcast on iHeartRadio.